Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to What is Fabrizio Inking. And today I am inking the alternate cover for issue 1. If you're new to me and my work, I have a comic book called Horace H. Hoover. Issues 1 and 3 are available on HoraceHoover.com. And basically what I'm doing is an alternate cover for issue 1. So I started inking it last stream, and I'll be continuing it today. I do apologize, my voice might be a little hoarse. I was talking a lot yesterday, so I may keep my chatter to a minimum, but if you have any questions, comments, let me know. And I will start inking. I did substitute my traditional coffee for ice water, because I literally can't take the heat. But hey, Dr. Mask, how's it going? Hope you're having a good Sunday. Plastic City is fast approaching, so excited to go to that. I will admit I'm not excited about that drive. For me, it is a very, very long drive, but it'll be fun. Alrighty, let's see here. I'm not sure when I'll be releasing the alternate covers for issues 1 and 2, but I'm not in a hurry to do that right now. So that's why I'm just doing these inks on the streams. So whenever they're done, then I'll worry about putting them out. I have issues, the issues are already out available, so. Yeah, hot coffee on a hot day is pretty brutal, I think. I think it's actually one of the torture methods used in some black site. It's just, they don't waterboard them, they just give them hot coffee on a really hot day. So I have been plugging away on issue 4, and it's going good. I'm excited. I'm about to hit probably one of the, well, actually no, definitely the biggest sort of fight scene in the miniseries. So it's been really fun choreographing that out, because I really wanted to make sure I had enough room to do what I wanted to do. So that'll be the first really big fight scene in Horace H. Hoover, so that'll be fun. I do think there is such a thing as a fight scene that goes on too long. I don't know if I've ever seen that in a comic book, though. But movies, I actually feel like movies are really dragging their fight scenes way too long. I don't know if it's an artifact or inspiration from like all the John Wick stuff, that people are just doing like really long fight scenes, but they can get pretty boring unless you do something clever. Hey Sasquatch Geddes, how's it going? Up to issue 2 and really enjoying them on a night off. Great to hear Horace's voice finally. That's awesome. Thanks for picking them up. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad you're liking them. Each issue, I think, objectively gets better. The more practice I get, the closer I get to what I had intended. So for me, issue 3 is definitely the closest to what I had in mind. Hey Ben, how's it going? Hot coffee on a hot day and no TP is a well-documented CIA torture method. I knew it. I was just guessing, but I'm sure there's a podcast about that out there. It'd be kind of funny is to do a fake podcast and just say you were a CIA asset. Because nobody really... Do they really check? You can just start a podcast and just say, yeah, I worked for the CIA from 75 to 82 or something. And then you can just always be like, well, it's the CIA. There's not going to be any record for it. And you can just make up whatever you want. Awesome to see your pencils and inks come to life and color. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really happy with the new books and the printing quality. So it's a different feel. So I was visiting with friends this weekend. Again, I was talking probably more than I should have. But something very cool happened. My cousin, when I was younger, I had sold him, and we've all done this, right? I've sold him part of my comic book collection. I was young and I needed money, so, you know, you look at your comics as your first source of potential income. So I sold him a bunch of comics. And long story short, he found them in like his parents' basement or something like that whenever they were remodeling. So out of the blue, he just brought up a bunch of comics. And these are the ones that I had sold to him many, 30 years ago or something like that. So it's pretty cool. It's fun to get little collections like that from other people. But it's even more fun when these are the comics that you sold 30 years ago that have like made the round trip. So I just threw them in a short box. It's actually a short box and like a quarter. So maybe, I don't know. What is that, like 175 comics or something? So that was really fun. Comics I hadn't seen in years. Although admittedly, I have rebought some of them because, we always regret that. So, but that was really cool. Admittedly, they were, we're talking like mid 80s, late 80s, into the 90s. So they weren't, they weren't old comics. Some X-Men. That's awesome. Welcome, old friends. I know. It's so funny. I will say one of the books that I really loved back in the day, and this was probably the 90s, is the Spider-Man 2099 when it came out. There's just something about the costume design and the writing too. Those first, I don't know how many issues Rick Leonardi drew. I've always loved his art. Peter David, I think, wrote some or all of them. And it's actually one of those like 90s books that I still think holds up pretty well. Definitely the art. I haven't reread them in a long time, but even when it came out, I was immediately interested in it. I know there's a lot of interest now because I think he's in the latest Spider-Man cartoon or something like that. I haven't watched it, but I thought I saw him pop up. Yeah, this alternate cover for issue 1, it's not a complete imagining of the cover. It's sort of it's a redo almost. Like if I had, similar composition, similar subject matter, how would I handle it this next time? So you'll kind of be able to see when you hold up the first version and the second one, kind of how I've evolved regarding, what I consider to be important compositionally, how my line work has changed. Yeah, so it's like a way to really measure what I look at now as opposed to that first version. And I'm not gonna say the first version's terrible. I mean, I liked it then and I still like it. But, no matter what we do, you give it some time, you look back on it, and you can always see things that you would do differently, even if you don't consider them mistakes per se. But I could have been more efficient with this here. I could have shown this, which either A is lends more mystery and drama, or maybe gives more foreshadowing or something, that'll be useful in the actual story. I mean, it's definitely a balancing act. It's very much like trailers for movies. What do you give away? What do you hold back? I've always been a huge proponent of, I just like the first few seconds of a trailer generally. You get the flavor of it, you get the tone. That's if they're not purposefully obfuscating that in the trailer, which they do sometimes. Sometimes they will portray a movie very differently than the final version. So outside of that, though, I just want to see the very beginning. Sometimes I don't even need to see that. Sometimes it will be, who's the director? Is David Fincher directing? Then I'm going to watch the movie. Is an actor that I really love in the movie? Then I'm going to see it. So I don't really need to see the trailer. That doesn't always end well, but I think it's a pretty good way to pick and choose. So So I was talking with some old friends that I hadn't seen in a very long time the other night, and it was pretty funny because I hadn't seen them or talked to them in many, many years, and several of them had told me, oh, I still have a drawing that you did of, one was like a demon clown. I mean, I don't remember what they were. I was thinking that was like a band cover, album cover or something. Somebody else said, oh, I have a drawing that you did of X, from school. I'm like, good Lord, that's awesome. I don't even have that many drawings from that time period. Especially, ones that would be in like a notebook or something like that. I either, fortunately or unfortunately, you have to get rid of a lot of your stuff. If not, you will have storage units filled with sketches, and it's impossible, trust me. I have had lots of storage units, and every once in a while you got to go through and you really need to cull the bad ones. sometimes it's not necessarily whether the drawing is bad. It is, I had an idea for something and I started a sketch. Is there something in this sketch that I can build on later? Or is it, am I just practicing leg anatomy? If I'm just practicing leg anatomy, then it can usually go away, unless it's spectacular. Which, I'm not saying doesn't happen, but I don't necessarily need to keep that. But if it's a sketch of a character or a house or something, and there's just something about it that looks interesting to me, after however long, then I'll definitely keep it. And sometimes that will essentially generate ideas for me later on. Just flipping through my own old sketches. What do you think the core components of a good cover include? Yeah, I mean, before I answer that, I will say, to me, the best covers were late 70s, early 80s. I really don't think that we got any better as the years went by. So there was something about that time period that I look back on today over and over again, and I study them. And I'm not entirely sure how they fit so much in a cover. And it was dramatic, and it just piqued your interest. Whether it was the colors in combination with the drawing, whether it was some of the characters, spouting dialogue on the cover, which I think helps. Yeah, I think it definitely has to have a little bit of drama to it. If we look at the classic, most famous covers of all time, it's Spider-Man throwing his mask in the trash, or you can just go down the list. It just makes you want to open it up. Is Cap quitting? As Captain America, I gotta check this out. I think I haven't tried to sort of break it down into a lot of detail, but there's the personal stuff, or the character driven covers, like Spider-Man quitting or something like that. And then you have the sort of the villain, the interesting, what crazy villain, is causing chaos now. So I think those are two big potential subject matter for a cover. But I still think how they did it, and their line work, and the composition, Gil Kane, we just go down the list. I still don't think we've done better, Part of me thinks it'll always come back to those guys like Buscema and Gil Kane and Neil Adams, and they were good artists first, drawing other things, and then they got into comics, and that translation over, it just brought a whole other level to it. So they were just perfectly suited for it. And then we're basically comic book creators that are just looking at other comic books. And I think that's really where things started to break down. And we've had decades of that, essentially just comic book creators that were only looking at other comic books, and now we're a copy of a copy. And I think it's watered down the drama, and I don't know how we get back to that. And admittedly, people say, oh, well, that other stuff is old-fashioned. And I get it, some people have their preference on time periods and what covers should look like. But I'm a big believer in a lot of that stuff isn't subjective. Some stuff is subjective, but a lot isn't. Whether or not a cover has good composition, that's objective. That's not subjective. That's a very technical thing that you can look at. Is there... But it starts with composition, for sure. After watching Napoleon, my trust in good directors and good actors is shaky. That's what I heard. And it's funny because, Ridley Scott, he was one of those directors you always knew. Yeah, I mean, it's a Ridley Scott movie. I'll definitely check it out. It won't be bad, right? It's like there's no chance it's going to be terrible. I haven't seen Napoleon, though, but I was excited for it, but the reviews and everything I heard, I was like, wow, that's odd. Sasquatch Gettys, I think a lot of my good old drawings are in yearbooks. Probably could be all late 80s heavy metal covers. I can't tell you how many of those things I did. Everywhere, all the time. Dr. Mask, outside of an issue 1, I want a cover that tells a story. I'm down with covers of the main character as an introductory cover. Yeah, that first issue has to show the main character in a heroic pose. You really want to showcase the main character. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But after that, you want to try to cram as much story in as possible. And I guess the question is, what do we consider story today versus what they considered story before? And maybe our definition is a little less strict, and maybe they really wanted to, they didn't want any confusion at all, so they might have gone over the top to convey whatever the mystery or issue is about. And my voice is not going to hold up for this whole stream. But I think I've mentioned it before, and these are things that I think about, I modify, I think about. I don't have all the answers, but you have your basic composition, which is just would be the line work. Then you have the composition of the lights and darks. So you have these large black areas and these large white areas, and there has to be a balance across the whole page. If you look at old, really great covers where there's something going on, a battle, a fight scene, something like that, there's just a really great balance of the white areas and the black areas. So that's sort of a secondary level of composition, because that spotting of blacks can actually either add to the basic composition or go against the grain and start to ruin the composition you had started. And then third, it's colors. I harp on colors a lot. I know, but I think that's where we really went down a wrong path, is crazy digital coloring, all the gradients, that kind of stuff. To me is, I'm not saying never use it, I'm not saying that, but it can fight with the composition you already laid down. You want clarity. It always comes down to clarity. That's the one thing. Well, is it clearer? Is it more clear or less clear than when I, put down this one particular stroke, or when I added this character? Because there are times when I thought I was abundantly clear about conveying a particular action or a scene or what's going on, and then you hand that to somebody and they are confused. And even if they get it eventually, that's not fast enough. They have to be able to instantly look at a page, look at a panel, and know what's going on. If they have to even stop for a second and decipher it, you've pretty much lost. I also think that's why some old books, well, semi-recently I was reading the Dark Phoenix. And it was interesting because there were panels that did not do a good job of actually telling the story, to the point where Chris Claremont, like in the next panel, had to sort of retcon what happened in the previous panel. There's a scene in particular at the very end where I went to the next panel and I'm like, what just happened here? And it was something about Scott getting hit really bad or something. But that the panel before really didn't show it. So Chris Claremont's like, oh, I gotta put this in the lettering now, just to make sure there's no confusion. Like, even before I thought about it, well, I shouldn't say that. I didn't have time to really mull it over before Chris Claremont clarified what actually happened in that panel. I should pull it out one of these days. It was pretty interesting to me to see that happen in such a landmark book. But I guess the difference is recognizing it and then working something else in to fix it. And not thinking, the reader will figure it out. It's fine. They may not. I also think that the clearer storytelling that you produce, the more complex stories you can tell. If you're really good at conveying, panel to panel action, what's going on, if you excel at that, then you can actually tell a really complex story. If not, your story's going to have to be overly simplistic, which, depending on what you're trying to achieve, I'm not saying you can't do that, but if you're trying to tell something really complex, your storytelling has to be crystal clear. Alrighty, so I've really focused in on this center part a lot, so I gotta jump around here. So one of the big differences, I'll point this out, between the original and this redo is this character. So in the original cover, I really just wanted to put him in shadow and just have his mouth, like this smiling mouth and ears popping out with his hand. Since the book's been out and people know the character, I thought it would be fun actually to show the character instead of keeping him in shadow. So that's a pretty big difference. Totally off topic. Once you scan your inks, do you adjust the level of blacks to reduce any brush marks? make the blacks even, or leave a little bit of brushwork in there? You know, it depends on the drawing sometimes. I definitely adjust the levels because I want things to look pretty crisp, but sometimes that ruins certain brushwork. So it almost depends on the page, you know, how far I take it. Sometimes in the past I have done like threshold, where it basically just does either black or white. That's a really harsh look, and I've only done it for a few times, and I don't think I'll do it again. It's okay to have a little, you know, a little bit of gray, especially for brushes like this. So I just kind of pick, like for this, a good example would be, I'll take a look at the center, which is obviously the focal point, and then it goes up, and we have this. So I'll take a look at this, and if that comes, like after I do the leveling, if this looks good to me, then I'll use that as my target, and I'll push it up or down, and then we'll see how it affects the other areas. If I lose too much detail, or if things start to bleed a little bit, then I'll knock it back. But I try to use like one area of the page as just my test, because, you know, his hand might look okay, but then Horus's helmet looks bad. I would rather have his hand look a little squashed instead of having Horus's helmet or something look bad. So that's what I do. Hey, Psychotronic Squirt Gun, how's it going? Thanks for picking up the books, I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know how many I've sent out at this point, but I'm excited to see what people think. Because the story is still going, and we still have issue 5 to go. I'm sorry, issue 4. So issue 4 is going to be sort of the resolution of that ongoing arc. So it is fun sometimes to hear what people think is going on, or, you know, what they think of certain characters. Sometimes characters you think people will like, they don't, and vice versa. And I definitely make sure that I leave things, and I want to say vague, but I leave some things a little mysterious because I want to come back to them, and I have plans for all of that. So I just don't want to just spill the beans on everything all the time in the book. To me, that's kind of boring. You know, there's a certain amount you want to know and a certain amount you don't. Especially for a mystery, you know, a mystery book. The genre is mystery, so I definitely try to err on the side of a little more mystery than less. Psychotronic Squirt Gun, yeah, I received them the day before yesterday. One on top of my read pile. My friend loved the concept. Awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, Captain Goodnight, how's it going? What is Giant Paul, the assassin of King Elam, doing here? What? I don't know what you're talking about, Captain Goodnight. I don't know if anybody else has translated Slurp besides Captain Goodnight. So Slurp speaks a different language in the books, and it's just a different font that I use as his different language. So anybody who wants to take the time and has the know-how, you can actually translate Slurp's dialogue in the books. So Captain Goodnight in the chat has translated. I don't know if anybody else has, or they haven't told me if they have. I mean, obviously you don't need to enjoy the books, but I just thought it was an extra little bit of fun, you know, if people want to do that. it makes the book a little deeper as far as, you know, it's one more Easter egg. If you want to go further, you can check out Slurp's language. There's always things in the background. I think, well, let me double check. There's hieroglyphics. Yeah, there's hieroglyphics in the first issue that also you can translate. I try not to do just arbitrary things. Now, sometimes, you know, if I'm doing a dead language or something like that, you know, I'm going to just use the language the best I can. But sometimes you can translate that stuff, and if I can, then I do. So if you see something in a book and you're like, yeah, I wonder if that's real, and I wonder what it says, the chances are pretty good that you'll be able to track it down. There's a pretty big translation in issue 4, which was a lot of fun to do. I guess I'll wait to see if anybody does that. Psychotronics Quirkun, you seem like you leave a lot to the imagination. Very nice. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, you know, that's where the weird fiction inspiration really comes into play. I love Lovecraft and all that kind of stuff, but the gaps is really where I really enjoy. I like reading that stuff, so that's kind of what I bring to the table. But again, everything, I have notes on everything. Nothing's arbitrary. I have plans to explain or, you know, bring to light everything that I've introduced. Now, as far as when, we'll see, but that's part of the fun too. Hopefully. Easter eggs, kind of like that TV series Lost. Yeah, I love Easter eggs in books and comics and things like that, so I try to do as much as I can. Because you find yourself needing to do all of these things by necessity. So, like, I need to show a particular book, and it's in a different language. I could just do gibberish quickly, or I could make it a little more real. Verisimilitude is the word. So why not? If I have time. I mean, I know some people, they come up with their own languages and they do that kind of stuff. But I like grounding things in a bit of reality. That was Lovecraft's trick. Other people do it too, but you incorporate your own sort of mythology in these stories along with other people's, and between them all, it just feels more real instead of just making everything up whole cloth. Captain Goodnight, Slurp's dialogue is a fun Easter egg. Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping somebody eventually would crack that code. Had to step away playing catch up now. Oh, no problem, Dr. Mask. Yeah, I'm actually at 40 minutes. Again, I am shocked my voice lasted this long. I'll definitely stop pretty soon here, though. It would be pretty fun. I will try to stream from Plastic City a little bit. That might be fun. I didn't get a chance to do that for Three Rivers, but the goal is to stream a little bit from Plastic City. I did get a request last week to do a video on hatching, in particular faces. So I will plan on doing that this week, like a short video if anybody's interested on how I handle it. It's definitely something that is difficult, and not just faces in general, but what direction do you hatch? Is it the direction of the light? Is it the direction of the form? And I really wish there was a one answer, but it depends. And I'll show that in a video. Sometimes it is the direction of the light, sometimes it's the form. You really need to figure out where the priority is. So yeah, check out that video for anybody who's interested in that. I'll be working on that. So Captain Goodnight introduced me to a new author, Thomas Ligotti, which I have never heard of him. Captain Goodnight is the first person to ever mention that name to me, and I feel kind of weird that I never heard his name before. It's weird fiction horror, so I mean, I can't believe it didn't come up before, but I have a collected version of his stuff, and I read the first story. It was really good. Definitely weird fiction. Emphasis on the weird. But very interesting. And the cool thing is, it's weird, and I don't mean just subject matter. Like how he writes, which was very interesting. I really couldn't tie his style to another author. So that really piqued my interest, because sometimes just reading something completely different than the stuff you're used to can help your stuff a lot. So if anybody's out there, I mean, if there are Ligotti fans, let me know. That's fascinating that I never heard him before. Not that I know every author, but again, in that very niche genre of like weird fiction horror, I can't believe I never saw his name before. Verisimilitude, yeah. It is a great word. I wish I could use it more. Dr. Mask, those short videos you have done about the creative process. Oh, thank you. I know I don't do very many, and it's not because I don't want to. It's the only time I do those videos are like when things have been bugging me and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I just feel like, you know what, I really want to do a video. So I didn't want to force any like conceptual things that I wasn't thinking about, because I just feel like that wouldn't have sounded sincere, and I don't know if I would have had anything interesting to say. I have another video planned, which hopefully people will find some value in. Alrighty, I think we are looking good. I think I'm going to close down a little bit early. Let's take a look at the whole thing. As soon as I can zoom in. Nope, wrong one. Nope. Looks like it's not working. My autofocus is not going. Alright, well, I'll feed it in like a fax machine. And you guys are just gonna have to put it together. Definitely got some work done on this one. Horse is looking pretty good. Got a giant paw. Starting to look good. Yeah, this will probably be two more streams. And I'll save these for these Sunday streams so everybody can see the full start to finish on these things. I always think that's pretty fun. Alrighty. Yeah, so if you haven't picked up the books, go to HoraceHoover.com and I'll keep people posted on issue 4. It's a lot of fun. Also, I will be posting new things on my store probably once a month. Open for commissions, posters, little things to just kind of get the store going. So look out for that and sign up to my Substack, and I'll be sending out like coupons like once a month probably for discounts and things like that, which will hopefully help. All right, hope everybody has a good weekend, rest of their Sunday at least, and thanks everybody for popping in chat. I really appreciate it. This was fun. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.